The Freemasons are one of the most known secret societies in the world. While many people know they exist, very few know why they exist and what they even do. Since Masonry is a secret society, or like I call it, a society of secrets, most of their practices and beliefs are shrouded in mystery. Many speculations have been made about this ominous, seemingly powerful organization, with some people thinking it's just a club for old folks, while others think it's a demonic organization with a diabolical plan to take over the world. Masonry is one of the most popular secret societies ever created, and still we know so little about their secrets. With over 6 million members worldwide, it's pretty strange that not one former member has ever come out to talk. Thankfully, that has changed, as recently a former 33rd degree Mason chose to break his oath and gave an interview where he didn't hold back, revealing all of their secrets they don't want the world finding out about. Hey guys, I hope all is well. Welcome back to The Truth Is, where I drop new videos every other day exposing the truth. In today's episode, we will be reacting to an interview this former 33rd degree Mason gave on the Almost False channel. But before we begin, I just wanted to let you guys know, I decided to make my Patreon exclusive video on the mysterious death of Trevor Moore free for everyone. This video is about the comedian Trevor Moore, who many people think was taken out by the elite because he revealed Hollywood's darkest secrets through his sketches. If you want to see this video for free, all you have to do is head over to Patreon, make an account, and join my Patreon for free. You can find the link to my Patreon in the description. I want to thank you all. Now, let's get right into it. While I have broken down so much about Masonry in previous videos, the channel is always growing, and I can't expect that everyone have seen my previous videos breaking down Masonry. So for those who don't know, Freemasonry is a secret society that was founded in the year 1717. But the organization goes back much further, with evidence suggesting it actually started in the 1500s. There's even evidence that suggests it's even older than that, as Masonry clearly descends from the Knights Templar organization. While most people think Masonry is just a club for old men to network, that's only a part of it. Not all members are old men. There are plenty of young people in Masonic organizations. In fact, there are Masonic organizations for kids called the Demolay, which, believe it or not, the Demolay played as inspiration for the Harry Potter franchise. The Freemasons are an occult secret society. They believe in magic and in the spiritual world, so the Masonic system heavily relies on the Bible and the belief of God and the devil and angels and demons. The Masons practice a form of magic called ceremonial magic, which is conducted by performing secret rituals that teach forbidden knowledge. Masonry is a collection of teachings that come directly from older occult belief systems, with most of their rituals and teachings coming directly from alchemy, specifically spiritual alchemy, the Kabbalah, and Gnosticism. In America, Masonry is the most powerful organization, as the organization is actually behind the creation of America, with most of the founding fathers being members of the Freemasons, and the first president of the United States, George Washington, also being a member. I recently made a video on my second channel, Truth Network, where I try to convince my cousin about the truth about Masonry. He doesn't believe that the Masons control America. But in that video, I showed them a Masonic play that was held in London back in 2017. The Masonic play was about how the Freemasons created America to operate under Masonic beliefs. In this Masonic play that was made only for Freemasons, they openly admitted they created the United States, and they put the all-seeing eye in the back of the dollar bill. The Masons are intertwined in the fabric of America. Their goal is to create a world that operates openly off Masonic ideologies. Now, if you were to ask a member about any of this, they won't tell you anything, as Freemasons are forced to take an oath of secrecy, punishable by death if broken. This is why we don't see that many Masons speak out about their affiliation. Thankfully, one brave former Mason who has denounced his Masonic ties and has decided to break his oath to speak out. Bill Schniblin, a former Satanist 33rd degree Mason and former Mormon, recently gave an interview with the Almost False YouTube channel. I have a lot of respect for the Almost False channel, as I appreciate the way that they respect their guests and ask important questions even when it sounds far-fetched. If you guys haven't, make sure to subscribe to the Almost False channel and show them some love. In the interview, Bill reveals so much important information that can cost them everything for exposing. He explains how the occult world and witchcraft eventually led him to selling his soul to the devil, how dealing in Satanism ended up introducing him to Freemasonry, where he climbed to the very top of the system. He even goes as far as revealing the secret of one of the highest degrees in Masonry, called the Royal Secret, which would truly disturb you. In today's episode, I wanted to react to what I thought were the most important parts of this interview. Now, I do recommend you guys go watch the full interview on the Almost False channel, as it was a pretty good interview with a lot of information. Now let's get into some of these important moments in the interview. The first part of the interview we need to talk about is when Bill talks about how he ended up becoming a witch and joining a coven.
I had a priest in my theology class who had a doctorate in theology, and he was teaching a course in Christology. And he took me aside and he said, if you want to be a priest, in the Catholic Church, it's taught, sacerdotes est altus Christus, the priest is another Christ. So if you want to be like Christ, he says to me, do you want to be like Christ? And I says, well, of course. Doesn't every Christian want to be like Christ? He said, well, if you want to be like Christ, you need to do what Christ did. And again, that made sense. And he said, well, if you want to be like Christ, you need to do what he did. And he went to the East and studied with the gurus in India. He went and studied with the lamas in Tibet. He went to Egypt and studied with the magicians there. That's how he was able to raise the dead, to walk on water, to do all these miracles. So he says, what you need to do is you need to start studying the occult. And this is a priest telling me this. And so I thought, okay, now mind you, this is obviously decades before there was an internet. I mean, there was a little bookstore downtown. And I went there and I found a few scattering books on like the occult. And I found this book that was called Diary of a Witch by Sybil Leek. And she was one of the very first witches to, so to speak, come out of the broom closet. She was a British woman, and she was a medium. And anyhow, I read the book, and she was asserting in the book that witches were not evil, that this was an ancient pagan mystery religion. Among other things, she claimed that Jesus was a witch, and his 12 apostles were his coven, along with their wives, So I kind of bought into that. And I found out about this guy, Alex Sanders, who was the supposed king of the witches over in London. I sent him a letter. This is around 1968, 69. And his wife sent me back a thing. Okay, here's a coven in Rockford, Illinois, which is about 90 minutes from Dubuque. I went there and I got initiated as a witch. And then later on, I hooked up with an Alexandrian coven in Boston, and I was made a witch high priest. Started covens in, first of all, in Dubuque, where I was, and then moved to Milwaukee because there was a fellow there who had an occult bookstore. And he said, I've got all these people that want to become witches. Can you come and teach them?
When we're talking about like you being in a coven and you doing witchcraft, I just want to make sure that we don't skip over that part. Like, what kind of witchcraft are we talking about? Because there's a lot of
it was okay. Witchcraft originally, the kind of publicly available witchcraft was originally started by Gerald Gardner, and he came out. Witchcraft became legal in England. It was a crime until 1951. It was made legal, and he claimed, and all this is disputed, but he claimed that he came in contact with an ancient coven of witches in the New Forest region of England. They initiated him and then made him a high priest, and he went off and initiated other people. Then there's this other bunch, this Alex Sanders fellow. He also claims to have been initiated by a ancient line of witches by his grandmother. So those were the two main fountainheads of witchcraft in the 60s. Both were from England, but both had, spread to America. And it was white witchcraft. Both groups, their rituals were virtually identical. And but the Alexandrian group that I was in was more into ceremonial magic, which is like kind of, if in like Protestantism, they have the distinction between high church and low church. Well, Alexandrian is more high church witchcraft. We believe in demons. We just believe that it was all this nature, airy fairy, gathering herbs in the forest and dancing in the nude. And, it all sounds very innocent, except there's, especially in the Alexandrian rite, there's also some sex magic that's involved. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yes. Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure that we got that covered. So actually, let's go back to the occult bookstore that you were talking about, and let's pick up the story from there.
Well, so anyway, so we hooked up with this fellow in the basement of the store. We would hold these classes. They were packed because there were all these people. And again, this was 1972. And there was all these people who are kind of like quasi hippies, and they wanted to get into the occult and magic and blah, blah, blah. The other thing that happened at the same time is that we encountered this fellow called Eli, who was a grandmaster druid of North America. And druids are a little bit different than witches. It's kind of like the difference between being a Baptist and being a Methodist, And we were invited down to Arkansas, which is where this fellow lived. He had lived on top of a mountain. He had kind of a organic farm there. And we went through the whole summer, got all this occult training. We were, high priests in Druidism by the time we got done. He took me aside and he said, if you really want to understand magic, you need to read this book. And he handed me the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. And I said, well, why would I want to read the Satanic Bible? Witches don't believe in Satan. And he said, well, just read the book. And LaVey's contention was that magic is really about Satan. But Satan is like an archetype, he said. There is no real Satan, but it's like an energy, egregore, an archetype that you can draw upon. And it kind of made sense to me. And again, the devil was gradually pulling me in. So I wrote the Church of Satan, which at that time was in San Francisco. I became a first-degree member. And then later on, I went through some exams and studies, and I became a warlock, which was a second-degree member of the Church of Satan. And at this also, I should say this, because this is critical. This Eli guy, the Grand Druid down in Arkansas, he gave us 2 words of advice. First of all, he said, if you really want to understand Luciferian energy, you need to join the Freemasonic Order. And he himself was a 33rd degree Mason. He showed me his little certificate he got. He also told me that if he ever felt like we were in deep spiritual trouble, that I should join the Mormon Church, because it was a church that had been started by witches, for witches, that we could hang out in and pretend to be nice. The image of the Mormon Church. They're straight, nice, wonderful, all-American people with happy families.
As you heard for yourself, Bill tells the story of how he got involved with witchcraft. One of the most important things he mentioned here was when he said he was told when he was a witch that magic was just harnessing energy from the devil. This is truly important, and I believe many people need to hear this. So many people are under the assumption that there's 2 sides of magic. There is a good side of magic called white magic, and there is a dark side of magic called black magic. This is nonsense though, and it's propaganda put out by occultists to confuse God-fearing people. Masonic companies like Disney have instilled this in the minds of so many people since they were children, telling people that there are 2 sides of magic, while the truth is, all of the magic is from the devil and none of it is good. God specifically speaks out against all forms of magic. Bill also explains how he was told that if he wanted to understand Luciferianism, he should become a Freemason. He spoke about a druid telling him this. For those who don't know, the druids are warlocks from pagan times that were known to utilize holly trees to make holly wands that allow them to cast spells. This is where the word Hollywood comes from. I recently spoke about this in my video exposing the Oscars in Hollywood. You should check it out after this one if you haven't seen it yet. In this part of the interview, he also spoke about selling his soul, which he explains exactly how he did it in this part.
When I was into Satanism, we understood and were taught that Satan draws energy from being worshipped. And when these guys, they don't understand it. Every time a Mason kneels at the altar and swears an oath, the devil gets energy from that. And again, most Masons, if they heard this, they would be scandalized. They'd say, this guy's a nut. But the funny thing is, and like you say, you've talked with people who, to a greater degree or a lesser degree, and believe me, we've talked to dozens of people over the years in ministry who came to us, who were literally taken to the Masonic Lodge after hours, laid on that very same altar that the Holy King James Bible laid on, and they were ganged by a bunch of old men that were all high-level Masons until they were practically dead.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier, because we kind of did a tangent on Freemasonry, because I thought it was very important, but you talked about selling your soul. Let's get back to that, because I definitely don't want to ignore that. Can you explain the circumstances around that?
Well, again, there was this group in Chicago, and they were entwined with this Memphis Mitzrayim rite, and they were also with this. It was like 2 things together: the Brotherhood, which I mentioned earlier, and then this Memphis Mitzrayim thing. And I interacted with these people, and At a certain point, they said, well, if you want to go any further and become a satanic priest, you need to, sell your soul to the devil. And so they took me to this park in Glen Ellen, Illinois, which is like a suburb of Chicago. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was a very weird park. It was broad daylight. And they said, don't worry about it. The cops are all devil worshipers. And in the center of the park, there was this like area where they had these weird Egyptian statues. There literally was an altar with horns, kind of like the pictures you see of the altar in the Temple of Solomon, that kind of thing. And they brought out this black book, and there were all these names in it. And this one supposed high-level Satanist kind of officiated. And I swore an oath to Satan, my allegiance to him, that I would serve him for 7 years, and he would give me everything I wanted, wine, women, song, power, occult power, whatever. And at the end of those 7 years, he could kill me and take me to hell. By that time, I had been told that the Satanists believe that hell is like one long orgy, so to speak, So I didn't think going to hell was a bad thing at that time. So I had to sign my name in blood in this black book. And supposedly, this sounds funny, but I was supposed to go out and find 7 people to sell their souls to the devil under me, so to speak, sort of like multi-level marketing, but for the devil. And I did. I got 7, and I feel so bad about this. I've contacted as many of these people as I can find to try and talk them out of it and, repent and all that. But,
As you heard for yourself, Bill explains that he eventually sold his soul on his occult journey, claiming that he made a pact with the devil to receive demonic blessings for 7 years. But after 7 years, the devil would come to collect his soul and drag him to hell. He also said that he was then instructed to gather 7 more souls to follow the devil. I found this important because, again, many people are pushing misinformation about this. People are under the impression that no one can sell their souls because it belongs to God. This is completely wrong. While all souls do belong to God, a soul is the spiritual essence of a person. The soul is essentially you. So people saying that all souls belong to God really just means that all people belong to God. But when a person sells their soul spiritually, they are choosing to align their spiritual existence with Lucifer, choosing to ignore God's will and instead serve their own will or Lucifer's will. Bill confirms this and reveals that there is indeed people who are spiritually selling their souls for demonic blessings. In the next part of the interview, Bill breaks his oath and reveals the royal secret of Freemasonry.
We've just been talking about over in Europe, there's what's called the Rite of Memphis Mithraeum. And that is 360 degrees beyond what's, I've already discussed. And most Masons don't even know about that. Now, I got up to the, if memory serves, 96 degree. And because how I did that is there was a group in Chicago where they were involved with that thing, because Chicago was and probably still is a major nexus of Satanism. Most people don't know that. So this group brought me into Memphis Mithraeum, and ultimately there was a fellow that flew over all the way from Paris, who was the son of Pappus. Now, you probably don't know that name, but Pappus was a very prominent 19th century high-level occultist and ceremonial magician. And he wrote a book called The Tarot of the Bohemians, about tarot cards, And he came over and he brought me into the 97th degree. And this is where you get into the really deep stuff, the ideas behind sexual alchemy, how to supposedly live forever, all this creepy stuff. Anyway, I would go up to these guys that had been in the Scottish Rite forever, older men that were in their 60s. And I'd say, okay, I'm now a sublime prince of the royal secret. Huang, they did this initiation, and I was a sublime prince of the royal secret. And so what's the royal secret? And they go, I don't know. Now, whether they were just feigning ignorance, because at this time I was like in my late 20s, or what, I don't know. But I learned eventually, after getting into the Rite of Memphis Mithraeum, and again, this is something that probably only 1 in 1,000 Masons in America understands, is that the royal secret is that you can live forever by sexually vampirizing children. Literally. And that's what these people believe. Now, again, the vast majority of Masons have no understanding of any of this. They just think it's this good old boys club that teaches, morality. And this is the way with almost all of these groups, whether it's the Mormons or the Masons or the witches or the Vatican. They all have this vast number of reasonably good people, in some cases very good people, under them that are sort of feeding them all of this energy.
As you heard for yourself, Bill claims that Masonry's royal secret is that the highest degree Masons use the young in their rituals in order to spiritually live forever. What Bill was referring to was sex magic, which comes from Gnosticism and alchemy. Like I have explained many times before, Masonry is heavily reliant on sex magic rituals. Some of these rituals are twisted and require the participation of the young and innocent in order for them to work. This is what these high-degree Masons might be participating in, and according to Bill, he has seen it for himself. In this part of the interview, Bill talks about joining the Freemasons after being told to by a Druid who himself was a 33rd degree Mason.
Joined the Masonic Lodge, became a Master Mason at the same time as I was a Satanist and a witch. And only our inner circle of the witches that by this time, we've initiated over 100 witches. And only our inner circle knew that we were also Satanists. And we were continuing in this, and I finally figured out that there was a deeper level of Satanism. And I got in touch with some of them. And again, there was no internet. We had to do all this by mail and whatnot. And there was a group in Michigan called the Order of the Black Ram, which was like more hardcore satanic stuff. There was another group in Chicago called The Brotherhood, and I got involved with them. And I got really, I sold my soul to the devil. That's how deep I got into this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, the basic thing is what's called the Blue Lodge. And that consists of 3 degrees: entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason. A lot of Masons never go any further than that. I did. But basically, it's like an initiatory process. The requirements are you have to, at that time, now mind you, this was, I think I joined in 75. You had to be a man, freeborn, of good report, and well recommended. So they asked you if you believe in God, and I said, yes, I did. And they didn't ask which God I believed in. They just, do you believe in God? And I said, yes. And I didn't tell them that the God I believed in had horns. So anyhow, I went through there's this whole process. You do a lot of memory work, they call it. You memorize all of these ritual things. You have a mentor who's called your poster, who's an older Mason. And the guy that I had was a real, very kind guy, an executive in the power company. I can't remember the name of the company. And he helped me memorize all this stuff. And then you go to 2nd degree, and then you have a whole bunch of stuff to memorize. And just let me touch this briefly, because people ask me, well, at what point does Masonry start to look creepy? I mean, because there's tons of Christians that are Masons, literally thousands of them. And I just asked them, how can you do that? I mean, because when you start out as a Mason, they make you come to the lodge, they make you take off all your clothes except your undies. They put you in this like jammies. They're like, they're like pajamas. They're like, typically the one knee is bare and one breast is bare, your left breast, and I think your right knee. And you're blindfolded. You have a cable around your neck. It's like a velvet, they call it a cable tow. It's like a velvet blue rope. And you're tied up. And you're led to the door of the lodge. And you've got a guy leading you, because of course you're blindfolded. He knocks on the door, and somebody this is all ritualized. And the guy on the other side says, who comes here? And your guy who's guiding you, who's a lodge officer, he says, Mr. Bill Sneblin, who has been long in darkness, and now seeks to be brought to light, to receive the rights and benefits of the worshipful lodge, erected to God as all members have done before. And that's not it. You go into the lodge, you're led around, like they call it circumambulation. You walk around the lodge. They have these officers, a junior warden, a senior warden at the different, things of the compass. And in the east is the worshipful master, who's like the big cheese. Then you're made to kneel at this altar. Again, you're still blindfolded. And you're made to understand that you're putting your hands on this huge, it's like a pulpit Bible, big King James Bible. And this guy comes forward, this worshipful master, And he says, we're going to lead you through this oath. And I'm not going to go through the whole oath because it takes like 5 minutes, but it's this long, involved, and ultimately blood-curdling oath. At the end, you say, you swear, the essence of the oath is to keep the secrets of an entered apprentice Mason, which of course I'm violating right now. And then at the end, you swear that if I should ever reveal the secrets of an entered apprentice Mason, that I swear that I will have my throat cut across, my tongue torn out by the roots, and buried in the sands of the sea, where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours, should I ever knowingly violate this, my entered apprentice obligation. So help me God and keep me steadfast to the due performance of the same. At that point, the worshipful master says, my brother, in your current situation, what do you most desire? And then the guy that's with you, that he's a senior warden, says light, whispers it in your ear. And I say light. And then they remove the blindfold. And you see before you this big open Bible with a square and compass on it. And those represent the three great lights of Masonry: the Bible, the square, and the compass. And then they are revealed by the three lesser lights of Masonry, which are three burning tapers that are adjacent to the altar. Now that's the most mild initiation. From there on, they get more and more creepy. So I don't know how deep you want to go into this, but basically Masonry is an antichrist thing. It claims it's not religious, but it is. They play around with it because they say, oh, well, we're just religious, but we're not a religion. Because if they were a religion, then if you were already a Christian, you shouldn't join another religion. Most Christians would say that. Like, if you're a Christian, you wouldn't become a Buddhist.
Right.
Well, Masonry is a religion. I mean, it has all the qualities. So Masonry is a religion, and it's an antichrist religion. And the problem is that basically, if you drill down into this deep enough and read the books that are written by people like Albert Pike, like Albert Mackey, these are two, or Arthur Edward Waite. These are three prominent scholars of 19th century, early 20th century Masonry. And all of them were occultists. Arthur Edward Waite, he wrote a book on black magic and pacts, how to sell your soul to the devil.
As you heard for yourself, Bill admits he became a Freemason. He explains going through the first 3 degrees and the strange rituals he had to participate in. He also recited the oath every Mason takes. I actually have the book that contains this oath, and it was spot on. The most important thing Bill stated was that the Freemasons are an antichrist religion. This is the most important thing he said. And from my research, it's true. The Freemasons push an antichrist ideology to its members, teaching members the knowledge of Lucifer, which is self-worship, to erect man to God. So many lower degree Masons think that being a Mason doesn't go against being a Christian, when the truth is, it goes against it in every way, as Christians believe Christ is the only way to the Father, while Masons participate in rituals that teach man how to erect themselves from man to God. Bill also revealed something extremely important that Masons always try to deny. Masonry is a religion, and it's the religion of America. In the next part of the interview, Bill brings up prominent Masons who confirm the connection between Masonry and Lucifer.
Well, there's Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. He was like the greatest Masonic scholar in America of the 19th century. He was the sovereign grand commander of the Scottish Rite, and he's buried in the Scottish Rite Temple, 13 blocks from the White House. So that's one. The other one is Albert Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. There's Arthur Edward Waite, who has a whole bunch of books on Masonry. The other person who really you need to pay attention to in all of this, because he's more contemporary. Have you ever heard of Manly P. Hall?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the most notable occultists in America in the 20th century. He passed away in 1994, I think. He was the head of the Philosophical Research Society. He was a very high-level ceremonial magician. And he was also a 33rd degree Mason. And he wrote this book, Lost Keys of Freemasonry. And in that book, among many things, he says that when you become a master Mason, you are like a warrior on the block. And that's kind of Masonic code. And the seething energies of Lucifer are yours to command.
As you heard for yourself, Bill brings up the prominent Masons who had no issues with revealing Masonry's connection to Lucifer. These prominent Masons are idolized in the order, and most Masons don't know they're even Satanists. In the next part of the interview, Bill talks about the Masonic degree system and how it works.
In America, English Masonry is different, but in America, after Blue Lodge, it forks off in two directions. You can either go to the Scottish Rite or the York Rite. The York Rite has 7 degrees. The Scottish Rite has 29 degrees. When I was made a Master Mason, I was told the York Rite is the Christian path, so to speak. So why don't you go up that thing first? So I did. And the top of the York Rite is what is called the Knights Templar degree. Now in the Scottish Rite, you have these 29 degrees. Some of them are really creepy. I mean, seriously creepy. They have one, I think it's a 19th degree, where they actually try to call up the devil. And finally, at the top, the 32nd degree, which is the Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret. And that's as high as most people go. If you're some really important person, either in industry or in politics or in entertainment, you might be offered to become a 33rd degree Mason, which is the highest degree in American Masonry.
As you heard for yourself, Bill exposes the Masonic degree system from the bottom to the top. I have explained this many times over, and here you have a former 33rd degree Mason confirming this. People think Master Masons mean a high-ranking member, but it actually means nothing. You become a Master Mason after the first 3 degrees. Being a Master Mason is like getting keys to enter the Red Lodges, which is York Rite or Scottish Rite. Here is where you're able to grow to the top of the system and learn the truth about the organization. Something else important Bill said in this part of the interview was that the 19th degree in Masonry required the members to call on Lucifer. I don't understand how members want to pretend Masonry has nothing to do with the devil when Lucifer is literally all what Masonry is about. Bill also revealed that the 33rd degree is by invite only to members the lodge deem worthy. This is also true, as most Masons barely make it past the 3rd degree, let alone the 32nd degree. The Masonic elite choose who to teach their true secrets to, even within the Brotherhood, as they know if most people know what they were really up to, they would denounce the order. Honestly, this was truly an eye-opening interview, and it revealed so much. Bill wasn't afraid to speak out, and I suggest we all pray for his protection, as the Masons have been known to retaliate against some of their members that have spoken out before, like we saw with the case of William Morgan. As you can see, most people have been lied to about the Freemasons. They were under the impression that Masonry is just a club for old folks, when in reality, it's a society connected to the underworld. If you're being approached to join the organization, think again, as your very soul is at stake when you join. Well, I'm gonna end this one here. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.